Give me a minute, and I want to respond to Piata71's comment here. And it's a good comment. It's a reasonable, legitimate comment. And you can translate it for yourself if you'd like. But basically, what it says is, hey, Peter, you're telling a story here, but when I look at other channels, they're telling a very different story. What's the deal? And it's a fair question because at the time of filming, I told the story that I knew, which was that this area of Avdiivka that you see here in that red box, the Ukrainians had pulled back to these other positions surrounding that area and then allowed basically the Russians to come into a kill box. And the Russians sustained heavy, heavy losses. And as part of that report, I had video of tanks being hit, etc., right? Now, does that mean that the war has stopped and that these other guys are wrong and that I'm right? No, it does not mean that. This is a dynamic, fluid situation with literally thousands of men and hundreds of machines on the ground trying to unalive each other. It's a brutal, brutal place to be. And the Russians have demonstrated their willingness to pour men into the battle. And as Stalin said, quantity has a quality all its own. Just because, maybe those guys reported this story 24 hours before I did, when the Ukrainians had withdrawn, had pulled back, and the Russian telegram channels were all saying the same thing, that the Russians were pouring in there, that they had taken this area of Avdiivka. It's an industrial zone, that they had taken the industrial zone and were holding it. But as far as I know, those reports were premature, badly, badly premature. So it doesn't mean that they were wrong, and it doesn't mean that I am right. This is a dynamic and fluid situation that is constantly changing. And to the best of my knowledge, at the time of filming, the Ukrainians had demolished all of the Russians that came in there. Now again, quantity has a quality all its own. If you pour enough men and machines in there, will they overwhelm the Ukrainian defenses? They could well. And please, nobody mistake my enthusiasm for Ukrainian successes with an idea that this is an easy thing. There is nothing easy about this on either side. It's just that only one side has a legitimate claim in my mind, as far as I'm concerned. There's only one side in this that's in the right. But it's a nightmare hellscape for all involved. Make no mistake. Does my happy reporting about this situation mean that Avdiivka is secure and that the Russians have been repulsed? It does not. By all accounts, the Russians have somewhere between 30 and 40,000 reserves and frontline personnel in this area. That's a lot of men. And if they keep pouring them in there, there's every chance that Avdiivka will fall. Just as Bakhmut fell. But let's remember how Bakhmut turned out. The Russians remember it as the great victory because it was the only ground they took last year, right? In 2023, that was the only advance that they made was Bakhmut. It's the only ground they took, 40 square kilometers. By the most conservative estimates in the counteroffensive, the Ukrainians have taken 10 times that. By my estimates, it's another 3 times that, so 30 times. And remember what the outcome of Bakhmut was. an armed insurrectionist holding Rostov-on-Don, tanks on the highway to Moscow, the end of Wagner as we know it, and its absorption into the National Guard in Russia, the Rosguardia. And Evgeny Prigozhin, our boy Eugene, coming down in a fireball just outside of Moscow. So yeah, Avdiivka is likely to go. And with it, the Russian Empire as we know it. Thank you, my friends.